Ready to rock and roll. The September 19th, 2024 hearing for the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission is now called to order. And if I could please have you silence any audible devices that you may have, and if you could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And Ms. Tucker, could I please have a roll call?
Good morning, members. Member Craig?
Present.
Member Shelley?
Here.
Member Sixsmith?
Here.
Chair Mills?
Here.
And Member Costa and Member Patterson will be late, and our county chair representative is currently vacant.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tucker. We do have minutes from August 15th, 2024. Any discussion on the minutes?
I move to approve.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the August 15th, 2024 minutes from Ms. Shelley and a second from Mr. Sixma. Is there any conversation on that?
Sorry,
Yes,
I
Ms.
didn't
Tucker.
mean to interrupt. There is one correction that we did want to make to the minutes. On page 17, line 33, we wanted to correct the spelling of Christian Nagel's last name. It is Nagle.
Okay.
Don't want to get Chris's name wrong.
Ms. Shelley, do you want your motion to
Amend my
reflect
motion
that?
to reflect that.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, if anyone would like to speak for or against any of the cases being heard today, if you could please fill out a form at the back of the diocese and hand it to Ms. Tucker to my immediate left. We will be limiting you to a 3-minute time limit. And after the comments have been heard, I will give the applicant an opportunity to address any concerns the speakers have and answer any questions the commissioners may have. At this time, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Soria for legal comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is for members of the audience, for applicants, that decisions by this body on special exception cases and cases which rezone real property from one classification to another pursuant to the zoning ordinance are recommendations only to the county council and do not constitute a final hearing. New evidence may be introduced at the county council public hearing. Decisions on variances made by this body constitute final action subject to an appeal to the county council. And what this means is that no new evidence may be presented at the time of the county council public hearing on the appeal. Any aggrieved party that appeals such a decision is confined to the record made before this body. Hearings by this body on rezonings, special exceptions, and variances are quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that this body is acting more like a court and must take into account all oral, written, or demonstrative evidence presented. Their decisions on these cases must be based on competent substantial evidence in the record, and competent substantial evidence has been defined as that evidence a reasonable mind would accept to support a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Soria. Mr. Soria, also, could I get you to explain how many votes you have to have on the board? Because we have a minimum of 4 here today.
So for variances, our regulations require that a minimum of 4 must vote to approve a variance. So because we have a bare quorum, to approve any variance currently requires a unanimous decision by the 4 members who are currently sitting. It is not a majority vote of those present at this time. You need to meet that minimum 4. For recommendations such as rezonings or special exceptions, you can approve a recommendation for an item by a simple majority of those present. If any member, because you have a minimum quorum, leaves the dais, such as goes in the back, goes for a refreshment break, my recommendation to the chair is to stop the hearing so that we have a physical quorum present.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soria.
Can I ask you something real quick? That would make sense. I can see during the voting part of it, but when we are back there, it's on the screen, and you hear everything that's going on. So anytime anybody leaves at any time, we stop.
Anytime we drop below a physical quorum, yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha.
Below 4.
Right.
The reason I mentioned this today is because we only have 4 here present
Gotcha.
at the
okay.
moment. We have a couple on their way, but we only have 4 at the moment. So, okay. And while we're on legal comments, I would like to ask the commission to disclose for the record any ex parte communications that have occurred before or during the public hearing at which a vote is to be taken on any quasi-judicial matter. And I'll start with Ms. Craig to my immediate right.
I have none. None.
None.
And I have none. Okay, we do have a request this morning for a continuance, an item to be continued. That's a V24-068. Ms. Smith, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, sir. The applicant did not meet due public notice, so we are requesting that this be heard at the October 17th meeting.
Okay. If anyone is here to speak to that meeting, you need to be aware that that will be continued until October
17?
17th? Is that what the date?
17th.
Okay, October 17th.
Do we need to make a motion or not?
Okay, we do need a motion on that.
Okay, I'll make a motion in case 024004 be continued until the August.
No, variance.
Oh, variance, I'm sorry.
V24-068.
Okay. You know what? That's not what I'm
I can make the
showing.
motion.
Yeah, do it.
I'll make a motion that case number V-24-068 be continued till the PLDRC 1017, October 17th meeting.
Perfect, okay, and I'll back you up on that one. Second.
Okay, I've got a motion to continue variance V24-068 to the October 17th meeting from Ms. Shelley and a second from Mr. Sixman. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we do have some unfinished old business, but we're gonna, because of our request from one of the board members to be present, and he's not here yet, so we're gonna move that to the back of the meeting. So we're gonna move right into our new business this morning. Ms. Shelley, could I get the first case read into the record, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-24-061, variance to increase maximum fence height requirements on tourist B8 zoned property.
Okay. Mr. Shams, this one's yours.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Volusia County Planning. The subject property is fronting on 3 roadways and is subject to 3 front yards on the east, south, and west. The property is developed with a 1,300 square foot home and 200 square foot accessory structure. The home was built in 1953. The applicant would like to secure in the property and provide privacy from passersby on State Road A1A. They're seeking 2 variances to our fence ordinance to increase maximum fence height within the front yard. As you can see on the diagram, variance 1 is to increase the fence height to 6 feet for a total of 43 linear feet in the west front yard. So that's that northwest corner on the screen. Variance 2 is to increase the fence height to 6 feet for a total of 10 linear feet within the east front yard, as shown by the green line. The rest of the fencing will be 4 feet tall, and this includes a combination of proposed fencing and existing 4-foot wall. Overall, staff recommends approval, as variance 1 meets 5 of 5 criteria, and variance 2 meets 3 of 5 criteria. In the staff report, it does say that variance 2 fails, but we recently changed our review criteria to make a variance pass with 3 of 5. That explains the change. Staff recommends one condition, that the variances are limited to the size and location of the fences as depicted on the variance site plan. And I'm available for comment or question.
Okay, any questions for staff?
You had me for a minute there. I said, when you were saying that you were for both of them, it's like, you're denying the okay. Glad you
Change.
stated that.
Okay, is the applicant present? Can I get your name and address for the record, sir?
Yes, Jason Huddleston at 7 Neptune Park Drive in Ormond Beach.
All right, sir, you've heard the staff comments. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm just here to answer any questions. I think the staff, I work in 14 counties in the state, and I'd like to say that Volusia County has been very easy to work with, and I've been just shocked with
Thank you.
Stephen's professional
Yeah.
manner, and just this entire process has been
Okay.
mind-blowing how just precision that you guys have.
Okay. All right. Do we have any public participation? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion here. Okay? Have any questions for the applicant?
No.
All right, you can have a seat, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
All right.
I would like to move that case number V-24-061 be approved, subject to the staff recommendation on page 6. And I also just wanted to make note that this particular piece of property has 3 yards that are considered front yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll second that one.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor from Ms. Shelley to approve variances 1 and 2 for V-24-061 with the one condition, staff condition, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. One.
Yes,
One
one
condition.
staff condition.
For Ms. Shelley, and then I have a second for Mr. Sixsmith. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-24-062, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R3 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Ray, this one's yours.
Good morning, Kristen Ray with Volusia County Planning. The applicants are seeking variances for an existing carport and shed. Variance 1 is to reduce the south front yard from 30 feet to 14.06 feet for the existing carport. And variance 2 is to reduce the east side yard from 5 feet to 3.51 feet for the existing shed. The carport was built in 2017 and the shed was built in 2011 prior to the applicants purchasing the property in 2022. The applicants are requesting the variances to legitimize the locations of the structures. Staff's recommendation was for approval as it met 5 of the 5 criteria for both variances 1 and 2. Should the PLDRC find that the applicant provided competent substantial evidence to support approval of the variances, there are 2 conditions provided for consideration. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Could I get you to come forward, sir? Could I get your name and address for the record?
Yeah. Michael Rayner, 1661 Britton Avenue.
Okay, you've heard the staff report this morning. Anything you'd like to add to that?
That sounds great.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Tucker, do we have any public participation on this one? All right, sir, you can have a seat and we'll make a decision here. I'm going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Shelley.
I move that case number V-24-062, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R3 zoned property be approved. There are no staff comments.
There's 2 conditions.
Oh, there are
2
two
conditions, yeah.
subject
2
to
of
the 2 staff recommendations.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't make that
Second.
note.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor for Ms. Shelley to approve variances 1 and 2 for V-24-062 with the staff, 2 staff conditions, and a second for Mr. Sixsmith. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Ms. Shelley, can I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-24-065, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R3 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley, and this one is Ms. Ray also.
Good morning again. The applicants are seeking variances for a proposed 300 square foot shed. Variance 1 is to allow the proposed accessory structure to be located within the front yard. And variance 2 is to reduce the east front yard from 30 feet to 13 feet. The subject property is bisected by John Anderson Drive. The western portion abuts Halifax River and is developed with a dock. And the eastern portion is developed with a single-family residence, pool, and wood deck. The applicants are proposing the shed on the western portion of the property, which is subject to 1 waterfront yard, 2 side yards, and 1 front yard. Environmental permitting did not support the variance request because it does not meet the avoidance and minimization criteria of the wetland ordinance. However, staff's recommendation for both variances 1 and 2 is a recommendation of approval, as it did meet 3 out of the 5 criteria for granting a variance. Should the PLDRC find that the applicant has provided competent substantial evidence to support approval of the variances, there are 2 conditions provided for consideration. I do also want to note that there was a letter of support received from an adjacent neighbor. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. And I might want to comment here that the reason they're changing it from, because our report showed denial, is because there has been a state, we changed the ordinance to where it only has to have 3 out of the 5 criteria to meet in order to make an approval. Okay, because I don't know because it's on there, it says deny, so, okay. All right, any questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Could you come forward, sir? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Mike Del Nino, 10 Sand Dollar Drive, Ormond Beach, 32176.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I think I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Other than the letter of recommendation, do we have any other public participation forums? Okay. We're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead,
Case number B24055, or 65, sorry. 65, motion for approval of the 2 variances of staff.
Okay, do we
Second.
have any conditions on this one?
Yeah, 2.
Okay.
2 conditions.
Okay, I got a motion from Mr. Sixma to approve variants 1 and 2 for V24065 with the 2 staff conditions. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-24-066, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban multifamily residential R8 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Ms. Smith, this one's yours.
This one's a little different than our typical variances. It comes to us from our land development office. The variances are for an undeveloped parcel in Ormond by the Sea. The site was previously occupied by a commercial structure that was demolished in the 90s. The zoning is urban multifamily residential, or R8, and it's a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and a maximum density of 20 units per acre. The future land use is urban high intensity, which allows between 8 and 20 units per acre. The land use and zoning are in place to allow the applicant to apply for final site plan without public hearings. The site is just under an acre, and they are asking for the minimum 8-unit condominium complex with pools and decks. The R8 zoning has some unique setback requirements, which is why we're here. The maximum allowable building height is 45 feet. The buildings are 41.4 feet tall. The minimum front yard's 25 feet. The minimum side yard is 12 feet, but anything over 25 feet requires additional side and rear yards at a ratio of 1 yard for every foot of building over 25 feet. And that's to prevent shading. Once stormwater, landscaping, fire safety, and other infrastructure requirements are considered in the land development process, variances are needed for the accessory structures on the north and west sides of the property. The buildings do meet the requirements without variances. However, the zoning enforcement official determined that the setbacks apply to the buildings and accessory structures. So variance 1 is to reduce the north side yard from 29 feet to 20 feet. And variance 2 is to reduce the west front yard from 25 to 15 feet. If the ratio, this is for pools and decks. If the ratio was not applied to the accessory structures, they would meet the 12-foot side yard requirement. And in most zoning classifications, a pool can be 8 feet from the property line and accessory structures can be 5 feet. Staff does recommend approval of these variances, and there is 1 letter of opposition.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions for staff? So, Ms. Smith, you're pretty much saying that this can be developed, it's just the accessory structures and the pool, what we're actually taking into consideration here, because the building can go regardless.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's my question. Okay, is the applicant present? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Good morning. My name is Mark Grande with Kimley Horn. I'm at 1530 Cornerstone Boulevard in Daytona Beach.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think everything was well covered. If you guys have any questions for me, be happy to address them.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant? Having none, we do have two participants this morning that would like to speak, and I will give you a chance for rebuttal after they have spoken, so if you just want to have a seat close by. Okay, Mr. Edward Shoemaker. Yes, okay, you're fine. Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name is Edward Schumacher. I live at 2 Sunset Boulevard, Ormond Beach, 32176.
Okay, and you would like to make a comment to this case, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Along with being an adjacent property owner to the property in question, I'm the director of the Silk Suncrest Association, Homeowners Association, for the residential area that surrounds this particular piece of property. Just as a general item is that the association and the members of the association are opposed to the construction of this condominium. That's not at issue today, but what is at issue is that the two streets that they're asking for the setbacks to bring closer are Sunset Boulevard and Ocean Crest Drive, which are two-lane residential, very narrow streets. There are no sidewalks available there, and the residents from the development that we're in pretty much use the roadway to get to and from A1A and various locations. I think it would be a safety issue to put any property closer, especially since the young lady mentioned that the minimum is met for the construction if they are granted a permit to build, and it would not necessarily need a larger piece of property for that development. I would request that the variance be denied based on that. We have a heavy amount of traffic on Sunset Boulevard because it goes from A1A to John Anderson Drive, and even commercial vehicles have started to use it to get to and from, So I would again request that it be denied.
Okay, sir. Any questions for the speaker? Now, sir, you realize that the variance is inconsistent with the pool and the accessory structures, not for the main building?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, sir. All right. You can have a seat, sir.
Okay.
All right. Then I have Mr. James Pickens. And you're for Carolyn Fitzpatrick, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You want to state your name and address for the record, sir?
James Pickens with the law firm McKinsey Vincent Pyle, 150 South Palmetto Avenue, Suite 300, Daytona Beach, Florida.
Okay. And you'd like to make a comment to this request?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm here representing the property owner to the north at 2030 Ocean Shores Boulevard. There was a picture earlier, but this is just a wedge shape between two other properties that already has minimum beach view and beach access. And this, the first variance to restrict the north side yard setback 9 feet will have a significant impact on their ability to view and enjoy their property, and we think it will have a negative impact on the property value. So we would object and request the variance number 1 be denied.
All right, sir. And there again, you realize that this variance one is for the accessory structure there, not
Correct, and I
necessarily the
believe-
building itself.
And I believe there's a fence that's already planned to go within that setback area, which would go to that.
All
Thank
right, sir. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, hearing none. Okay, you can have a seat, sir. Okay, do we have any other public participation forms for this case? Okay, and let it be noted that Mr. Patterson is here. You're welcome. All right. Okay, I'll give the applicant another chance for rebuttal on this. And my question is, which variance does sunset actually have an effect on?
If you'd like me to address that, that was actually going to be the first
Okay.
public concern that I was going to bring up. We're not requesting any variance along Sunset, so if you could bring the site plan back up. The current front yard setback is per code, so we're not actually looking to change anything there. And for the public safety concern, this development does actually propose a sidewalk in the right-of-way that takes pedestrian traffic off of the road along Sunset Boulevard. And I guess to the other concern, to the property to the north, again, this is just for the pool and deck, and it encroaches into the extended setback that's only really required because of the building height. And with the pool and deck not having any height, we're well outside of the standard 12-foot setback that would be required for a rear yard there. And part of what we are proposing is a extended landscape buffer and screen fencing there for that adjacent property. So one thing the owner wanted to make clear is if the variance was denied, the only thing that's changing on the site plan is the pool and deck goes away for that one unit, and essentially the landscape buffer and the fence goes all the way back to the 15-foot requirement. So we were trying to actually enhance the screening from that property,
So the
allow for the
fence,
accessory structure.
the fence and the landscape buffer you're saying is not as close as it could be, is what
Correct.
you're trying to say?
It's currently greater than the code minimum.
Okay. And I'll get Ms. Smith to verify that.
Well, I actually would like Kimberly Horn to clarify, because we got these numbers directly from our land development office. They said you will need 2 variances. What I'm hearing you say is you don't need variance 1?
No, we do need 2 variances.
Okay.
I was just addressing one of the public members had mentioned that the variance affected Sunset Boulevard. It's not along Sunset Boulevard. It's only along Ocean Crest.
No, we're talking about
and the rear
variance
property.
1. Variance 1. Where you said the fence and the individual that discussed about the north side.
Yes, sir. So yes, variance 1, we are needing that for the accessory structure only. What I mentioned was we are proposing an additional landscape buffer in that area, which I don't know if you can zoom in on the site plan, but we provide around 20 feet, which we can clarify on the site plan too during the land development review process, but we propose around 20 feet instead of the 15-foot minimum buffer adjacent to that
Okay, so
accessory structure.
So you would address that with our land development team, with any comments with them. What we're doing here in this hearing is giving you that 20 feet if the board desires to work within. So you will need that for your accessory structure one way or the other, according to this site plan.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Anything else you'd like to say?
No, sir. That's
Okay,
it.
we're going to close the floor for public participation
Thank you.
and open up for commission discussion or motion. And I might add, I understand not wanting to have a whole tall building there, but we're not really looking at the building. We're looking at these accessory structures, and I don't know how much of an impact that would actually have. Anyone else like to make a discussion on this?
No, I think you made a good point on that, so.
All right,
They've got full right to build the building itself.
yeah. I'll entertain a motion.
Donna, you've been quiet down there.
Did you want to speak, Ms. Craig?
The reason I'm reluctant on this one is that I live up in that area and I see it, just filling in more and more, and I don't like the idea of there being a 40-foot building up there, but I think it's already too far along in the process of that.
Well, the building, it's not the building
Yeah.
that is in
No.
question here, it's the
accessories.
the building can go, it's just, it's these setbacks to the accessory structure of the pool and the fencing there.
I guess that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay. Like I said in my comment, I can understand them not wanting the building there, but that's not what we're looking at here.
Mm-hmm. Might be totally different situation.
Yeah, it'd be different, but, you know,
Yeah.
so,
All yours, Edith.
okay,
Yeah, I apologize, your microphone's not on.
I
Thank
thought
you.
my loud voice would just do it. Case number V-24-066, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban multifamily residential R8 zoned property be approved, subject to, there are no staff conditions on this.
None. Yeah. I will make a second to move it.
okay, I've got a motion on the floor to approve variance V-24-066, variances 1 and 2. And there is no staff conditions, from Ms. Shelley and a second from Mr. Sixman. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
If I can make a note on this, if it was coming down to the building itself, my vote would probably be totally different, but accessories, I'd be for it. Just as a note.
Okay, Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Mr.
And make
Costa.
note that Mr. Costa has arrived.
Case number V-24-069, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on prime agriculture A1 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Mr. Shams, this one's yours.
Good morning. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,988 square foot home, 448 square foot accessory dwelling unit, and a 1,500 square foot accessory structure. The property is unique in that it is separated in the southeast corner by Reynolds Road. The majority of the property and the area the applicant is looking to construct is on the larger side. The property is subject to 2 front yards as it fronts Reynolds Road on the south and an unopened right-of-way on the east. The property has significant wetland areas. The whole site is about 20 acres and it's covered with about 16 acres of wetlands. So the buildable area is very limited. In addition, the property is within our natural resource management area, which requires a 50-foot wetland buffer, as you can see on the screen. This further limits the buildable area. So the applicant is trying to cluster the buildings in a high and dry location and not impact those wetlands. So they are requesting 3 variances. Variance 1 is for the home. They're requesting to reduce the front yard from 100 feet to 63.2 feet. Variance 2 is for the ADU. They're requesting to reduce the front yard from 100 feet to 39.7 feet. And then variance 3 is for the accessory structure, and they're looking to reduce the front yard from 100 feet to 41 feet. Overall, staff recommends approval. Variance 1 meets 5 of 5 criteria, and variances 2 and 3 meet 3 of 5 criteria. We do recommend one condition, that the variances are limited to the size and location of the proposed structures, and I'm available for comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any question for staff? Mr. Shams, you said it had how many conditions?
One condition, sir.
Okay, is the applicant present? Could I get you to come forward, sir? Could I get your name and address for the record, sir?
Kenneth Haven, and address is 4629 Heron Drive, New Smyrna Beach, Florida.
All right, sir, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Do we have any public participation on this? All right, sir. We're going to close the floor for public participation. Open up for commission discussion. for a motion. Any discussion on it?
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that case number V-24-069 be approved, subject to the one staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor from Ms. Shelley for V-24-069 for variances 1, 2, and 3 for approval with the one condition from staff and a second from Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We continue one.
69 got continued, or 68.
68, that's the Resley Road, okay.
Yeah, 68 got continued.
Okay. Where am I at? Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Trying to make me look good, aren't you? Case number V-24-070, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on rural residential RR zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Ray, this one's yours.
Good morning. The applicants are seeking a variance to reduce the west rear yard from 40 feet to 21.1 feet for a 530.4 square foot home addition. The single-family, single-family residence was constructed on the property in 1985. It does sit diagonally, which does provide little space for them to do the home addition. The garage and driveway are on the northern section of the residence, the screened-in pool on the west side, and the septic system is to the southeast of the residence. The home addition is proposed to the southwest section of the home. Staff's recommendation on the report says denial. However, the variance criteria has been changed. That needs to meet 3 out of 5 for approval. Therefore, staff's recommendation is for approval, as the variance request did meet 4 out of the 5 criteria. Should the PLDRC find that the applicant has provided competent substantial evidence, I do have one condition provided for consideration. I do also want to note that there was a letter of support from the adjacent neighbor that would be the most impacted with this variance request in your report packet. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? And just to bring the members that weren't here earlier up to speed, because of the new code or ordinances, was that what it is, an ordinance? Ordinance allowing staff to recommend with just 3,
Okay.
meeting 3 of the criteria rather than the 5. That's why on your reports it may say denying, but they've recommended approval.
Okay.
Okay? All right, where was that? No questions for staff. Is the applicant present? Could I get you to come forward, please? Good morning. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Jamie Moffitt, 2040 Duncan Trace, DeLand.
Okay. You've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm just here for questions if you have any.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Do we have any public participation? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion.
I'll make
Thank
a motion.
Okay, Mr. Costa?
There you go. I'm only 20, I'm half an hour late and I already forgot my name.
Forgot
so
your
that's-
name.
That's okay. So case number V-24-070, make a motion that we approve with the one staff recommended condition.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to approve variance V-24-070 with the one condition from staff and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-24-072, a variance to the accessory dwelling unit, ADU regulations on transitional agriculture A3 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Ms. Ray, this one is yours.
Good morning. The applicants are seeking a variance to allow an accessory dwelling unit to be greater than 50% of the living area of the principal structure. The property is currently developed with a 2,009 square foot single-family residence, a pool, and a detached garage. The applicants are proposing a 2-story accessory dwelling unit near the southeastern corner. The ADU is proposed to have a garage, workshop, bedroom, and bathroom on the first floor, and on the second floor, it will have a family room, bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen, creating the total living area at 1,312 square feet, which is about 65%. Staff's overall recommendation is for denial. However, should the PLDRC find that the applicants provided competent substantial evidence, there is one condition provided for consideration. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Mr. Costa, you had a question?
I do. I want to say that I, as well, I've read this ADU thing many times, but I was also under the impression that it was the overall footprint of the house, not the living area of the house. So, that being said, if we're not counting the living area, doesn't count the garage, doesn't count the porches, et cetera, correct? Only under air.
Correct.
All right, so when we're comparing that to the ADU, this ADU has a lot of space that is not living space. So if we're going to compare apples to apples, I think that we should discount anything that's not living area on the ADU for that 50% margin. And I know how it's written currently, but I'm making a statement more than a question. And if we start with subtracting the garages and the workspace that are not living areas, I think we're below that 50% margin.
The garage workshop is not included in the 50% margin.
It is not included in the 50%?
No, sir.
Well, then that changes things now, doesn't it? So you're comparing living to living.
But you had a good statement. That was good.
I did.
Yes, sir. The bedroom and bathroom on the first floor is in the living area, and that's what sets the ADU over the 50%.
What is our number? What is the actual 50% number?
The actual 50% is.
I mean, how far over are they? I guess is the question.
Approximately 300 square feet over.
They're 300 over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Good morning, sir. Can I get your name and address for the record?
Yes, it's John Bentley at 820 Haddon Lane, Deltona.
All right, you've heard the staff comments and recommendation. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add that the added living space downstairs, it can be turned into a non-living space easily by putting a door in, but it would be very convenient for myself, being that I work out in the yard a lot, to be able to walk into a restroom that is air conditioned, and have the extra bedroom used as an office and store sensitive things like clothes and stuff like that, so it's out of the elements, so it's in an air-conditioned area. And because I've had slight disabilities in the past, foot surgeries and stuff like that, it would also be nice to have an extra room to recover in, and that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, either way, the building does not exceed the footprint, and the affected living space, the air-conditioned area, is not going to affect our neighbors or anybody else. We did, when we had the plans made up, we had super insulated, so to reduce our air conditioning costs. So that extra living space shouldn't impact our electric bill.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Shelley?
Yes, hi. Is your son currently living in the main house?
No.
So that's the future plan?
That's the future plan,
excellent.
and
Okay.
he'd be
Perfect.
nearby
Sure, I thought
as
it was.
time goes on.
All right, great. And I thought so, because I was like, are y'all all living in the main house right now?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have any public participation forms? Okay, sir, we're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion, but I have a question for staff. Not really on this, but it's sort of on this. In looking at the big map, and maybe I looked at it wrong, it looks like there's a large dirt area. I don't see any trees on it. Do you know what that is? I'm just curious. It's to the, yes, up there. Do you know what that is? Yes. Okay, because, I mean, I'm just curious.
I'm John Bentley again. There's a company that's moving into that space, and they leveled the whole
It took all the green.
forest that's gone,
Okay.
which was a major impact on it. We almost cried when it was leveled.
Yeah.
But right now, it's not, they're
There's
not
no
really
signs or
using it.
anything.
Yeah, they put a big metal building up, and it's, as far as I know, empty.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. And I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Okay. I move that case number V-24-072 be approved, subject to the one staff recommendation.
Second.
I've got a motion on the floor to approve variance V 24072, one staff condition from Ms. Shelley, and a second from Mr. Sixman. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Make a comment to talk about that when we're done. Okay. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes. Case number Z-24-013, rezoning from the shopping center B3 zoning classification to the general commercial B4 zoning classification.
Mr. Chair, should we read that along with the next one?
Yes, sir. Let's go ahead and read both of them into the record.
Case number S-24-010, a special exception for a car wash on general commercial B4 zoned property.
Okay. All right, this one is
Shams.
Mr. Shams.
Good morning again.
I didn't make her. I didn't think you was her.
That's all
Yes,
right.
it is Mr. Shams.
So the applicant is proposing to rezone about 3 acres of a 15.4 acre site from the shopping center B3 zoning class to general commercial. The applicant intends to construct a 7-Eleven convenience store with gas station and automated car wash. The car wash is contingent on the accompanying special exception. So the site's being rezoned for 2 reasons. One, the minimum lot size of B4 is far smaller than B3, which allows for a standalone site of approximately 3 acres. B3 requires 10 acres. In addition, the car wash that they're proposing is permitted under special exception in B4, but not in B3. So that's kind of the reasons why. The parcel is currently undeveloped and heavily treed. Is located at the intersection of North US Highway 17, Glenwood Road, and State Road 11. It's within the county's thoroughfare overlay zone. It must meet those requirements. Due to being on a thoroughfare, the site is located in a commercial corridor. The areas south and west of the site are developed with a gas station and auto sales, respectively. The areas north and east are a mixture of undeveloped land and residential uses. The residential uses include a mobile home park. The site is within the City of DeLand's utility service area, and the city indicated they do have capacity to serve the site. In addition, the city also identified the site as being within their transit-oriented development corridor and the city's activity center, which provides higher density uses that are compatible with residential. The staff found the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as it has a commercial future land use designation, and the proposed use is consistent with that. The applicant did submit a traffic analysis for review, and the proposed rezoning and use would result in approximately 1,555 daily trips, but would not negatively impact the current level of service of US Highway 17. The Volusia County Traffic Engineering did review the project and found their analysis sufficient. The current daily traffic on US 17 is approximately 15,800 trips, and their threshold for reducing level of service is 39,800. So there's a lot of volume that can be placed. Overall, staff recommends forwarding to the County Council for final action with recommendation of approval for the rezoning. Now I'll kind of go through the special exception briefly. So the special exception is for a car wash on the site. Special exceptions are required to meet the dimensional standards of the zoning class and all the special exception criteria for staff approval. Based on the site plan provided, the proposed development does meet those standards. Specific to the special exception, the car wash will be a 900 square foot automated car wash with a 50-foot long area for customers to vacuum their cars and fill tires with air. Improvements to the site also include an improved stabilized driveway and 2 stormwater ponds. The proposed hours of operation for the gas station will be 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It will be automated and open the same time as the gas station. And according to the applicant, they wanted to make note the car wash will utilize recycled water in its operation. The site is within the county's thoroughfare overlay zone and is subject to a 35-foot landscape buffer along US 17, and that must be met. And they must also meet the non-residential design standards of our zoning ordinance. It does meet all special exception criteria and is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies relating to new urban development, meeting concurrency requirements. Overall, staff recommends approval and does recommend 4 conditions. I'm available for comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. Any questions for Mr. Costa?
Yeah, I'm looking at the site plan that was on the screen. Is that a preliminary or is that final?
It's preliminary. It's just for the special exception.
Okay, so you don't know if they've already applied with Florida Department of Transportation for excel, decel lanes?
Oh, not yet. Not at this stage. That'd be during the land development stage.
'Cause I'm trying to make coming out of that onto State Road 11, trying to make a left going across those 2 lanes is going to be a bit hairy, I think, at some certain times of day, but I'll let the traffic engineers deal with that one. Just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was my only concern also. I was wondering how they're gonna get it in there, because you got a red light right there on the corner, and then you've got an actual stop sign, not on 11, but on, I guess it's Glenwood Road right there, coming into 11. Even though you don't have that much traffic going that way, but it's gonna create traffic. Okay, but that's something traffic gonna have to work out. Okay, is the applicant present? Yes, go ahead.
This is probably something that I don't know about but in one area on the zoning change, it says reclaimed water service is not currently available. And then on the other section, it mentions the car wash will utilize recycled water in its operation.
Yeah, their own water.
That's their own water.
Yeah, their
from
own
the
water.
usage of the,
I'm sorry?
when they use it, it goes into a drain and gets come back up and reused.
I understand. So that's something that will be included in the construction?
Yes, the reclaimed water comment is from the city. They can't supply that, but the applicant is going to, as Mr. Mills said, recycle the water they use.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, could I get your name and address for the record?
Alana Smith with Cobb Cole Law Firm, 231 North Woodland, and we do have a presentation.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so as you know, this request is to rezone from B3 to B4, and the site currently that we're looking to develop includes approximately 2.97 acres of property. and it's zone B3, which, as Stephen touched on, gas stations and convenience stores are permitted uses under B3. The issue here being that the minimum project size in B3 zoning is 10 acres. So we're requesting to rezone to B4 to allow development of a 7-Eleven gas station and convenience store, and the minimum lot size in B4 is 1 acre. So again, we could still have this use if we develop it currently on 10 acres, but instead of doing a larger gas station like a Buc-ee's or something with a higher footprint, the developer wants to rezone to B4 to allow the development of that site on a smaller footprint. And again, the land use for this site is commercial, which is consistent with the use. And then just a survey of this site. Again, we're doing it on the smaller proposed parcel to the south. And then that was all for the rezoning. If anyone has any questions on that, as we were touching on, the special exception sort of ties into that as well. So again, it's a request for the car wash with a vacuum service. It's a single lane car wash, so just one car coming in at a time. Or again, it's a closed system in terms of water use, so that water is getting recycled. And again, car washes are permitted special exceptions in the B4 zoning district, and the use will be limited to the site improvements in area depicted on the concept plan that will show. And then I just wanted to touch on some of the features of the site. Integrating that car wash with the gas station consolidates those uses together. It makes it an accessible site for people who are already there utilizing the main use. And then it's also bordered by North Woodland to the west, State Road 11 to the east, and Glenwood to the south. And then to the north, as you saw on the survey, it's undeveloped land up there. And then the surrounding roadways sort of provide that buffer. It mitigates noise or visual impacts because it's not directly adjacent to any developments on the site. And then the proposed dual access configuration from North Woodland and State Road 11, that'll mitigate traffic a bit. You're not concentrating any traffic on one singular roadway, so it's dispersing that traffic a bit. And then there's sort of the concept plan that I was discussing, and I know it was already put up here earlier, but you see the car wash, and it's abutting the back of the undeveloped parcel to the north, and then there you see the gas station convenience store, and then to the back abutting State Road 11 is the stormwater area. And then one final thing I wanted to touch on, and I do know we received a letter of concern from a resident on Fernwood, which I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's kind of up to the north. And they were mainly concerned that removal of trees in that area will cause noise from North Woodland to carry over to the residential area. And I just wanted to note that, again, the proposed development is just for the southernmost portion of the parcel. So we aren't even touching anything up beyond that area. So the trees all there are remaining the same, and they'll still act as that sort of buffer from anything near Fernwood in terms of noise or anything. The trees over there aren't being touched. It's just the focus is the small parcel on the bottom.
Okay. Mr. Costa, you had a question?
Now that you brought that up. So does your client own the entire piece or just the corner?
Our client is the developer. They're the contract purchaser, but the owner owns the entire parcel. They're aware of the request. They obviously authorized us to do this request. But
Okay.
yeah, our client is the contract purchaser.
So there are plans for the rest of that parcel in the future?
I don't know what the owner intends to do with I mean, I guess they could develop it if they wanted to, but we haven't spoke with them about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, in that line of questioning, Ms. Smith, does that make this, it does not make the remaining non-conforming, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to clarify that. Okay, any questions for the applicant? All right, do we have any public participation forms? Okay, thank you. We're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion. I will say this is an area that is being developed into some commercial uses through that line down through there, so I don't see any issues with doing the zoning request or the special exception, really. Special exception is just for a small car wash.
I hope they have better luck than the rest of the commercial businesses down that end.
Want to take these separately?
It's going to happen, though.
Yep.
Yeah, well, read in the zoning request first, and then we'll do the special exception.
All right. On case Z-24-013. I recommend that we forward the rezoning application, case Z-24013, to the county council for a final action with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
She beat you to it, Tony?
No, I didn't do it.
Oh,
Pat did it.
oh, Pat did it.
I'm not going to compete with her.
Speak
Woo,
up,
she's
Pat.
I'm fast.
fast.
Okay, I got a
Pat was sleeping over here.
motion on the floor to forward the rezoning application case number Z-24013 to the county council for final action or recommendation of approval from Mr. Costa and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Costa, I'll accept your motion in a
I'll
second.
make a motion to forward the special exception case number S-24-010 to the county council for final action with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
You guys need an arm wrestle or something here.
Okay.
No, I'm not an arm wrestler.
See, she's got the advantage over Pat because she's sitting right next to you.
I've got a motion on the floor for Mr. Costa to forward the special exception case numbers S-24010 to the county council for final action with recommendation of approval and a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. I gotta keep it fair. Okay, that brings us to our original old new business of the ordinance. And Ms. Shelley, if you wanna read that ordinance in the record, please.
I don't have a copy of that ordinance.
Well, it's right there in your.
Just the one on the
yeah,
agenda, okay, we
yeah,
didn't
on the
get anything.
agenda item.
Okay. Ordinance O-24-004, 5-lot subdivisions.
Okay. Ms. McFarlane, this one is yours.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Carol McFarlane, Planning and Development Services Director. So we're here to talk about the 5-lot subdivisions. This is, I believe, the third time we've talked about this at the Planning Commission. So I don't want to get too far into the intent because we've already talked about this a lot, but it's about creating an easier path for development and easy button, if you will, about common sense decisions that staff can make when very little to no infrastructure is required for a subdivision. So just to clarify, plats are required for subdivision of 3 acre or 3 parcels or more. If you're doing a minor subdivision, just a split, you can do that through an overall development plan application. So it's, instead of going through 3 steps to get to a plat, you kind of do the first step and then stop. And the reason why that's important is I want to make it very clear that we do have a traditional subdivision process in place that can be used. So it's not you either do the 5 lots or you plat. We actually have, some easier ways to get there under certain circumstances. Try to narrow in on the changes that were made since the June discussion. We added a whereas clause so that we can clarify the intent. I think part of the discussion that we had back in June was making sure that we were very clear about certain things, especially roads and stormwater management. So we clarified that a grading plan or an affidavit of drainage control is required. Stormwater permit is not, and we also made changes to Division 8 stormwater management to make it clear that if your subdivision falls under this criteria and it's 5 acres or less, you don't need a stormwater permit. And that did cause the short title for the ordinance to change, so we had to re-advertise. That's why this didn't go last month. We also combined information relating to road access into one subparagraph E, and we did clarify that no roads or access easements can be created to serve the new lots. So we talked about direct access. If a lot has direct access onto a road or an easement, that the new lots would also have to have the direct access on that road or easement. So with that, I'm here for questions. Again, those were kind of the main changes that we looked at. I'm hoping that we provided a lot of clarification on some of the things that we talked about last time. Staff does ask that forward the ordinance to County Council with recommendation of approval. And if you have any comments, whether it be, little things that we want to change in the ordinance, or if there are bigger, broader policy decisions that we need to look at to, let's just make sure that we work together to get some really clear recommendations as we move forward to County Council. Thank you. I'm here for questions.
Okay. You can go first, Mr. Costa. Go ahead. You probably
Morning.
can address some of the things.
Thank you
out
for pushing this to the end for me. I
Sure.
appreciate that. And I may have missed this last time around on section 72-537, little c, where we're talking about contains at least 10,000 square feet of contiguous buildable area above the 100-year floodplain zone. In layman's terms, tell me what that means. The 100-year, are we talking X zone only? Is it
That is X zone, correct?
only?
Right.
So can you currently build on AE?
Only if you take that out of the floodplain. In other words, if you do a letter of map revision, you'd have to bring in fill to get you above the base flood elevation.
Okay.
And then you would not be in a floodplain. So what we're looking at with subparagraph C is we want to make sure that we're not affecting lands that are within a floodplain, right? You really can't just fill a land just in a floodplain just to fill it. There has to be some sort of a proposal for development or some sort of agricultural use that require the fill. So we believe that this subparagraph C, it tries to make it very clear that it's not that you can subdivide the lands and then put the fill in to bring it up to above base flood elevation. It's if you have to provide fill to get to that 10,000 square foot area, that you go through the traditional subdivision process to get there. Does that make sense?
Yes, but no. Because what we're looking at here, these five lot subdivisions are going to happen in your rural communities. So that being said, for instance, I'm on 5 acres. Let's just say that I was on 50 acres, but I'm on 5. Of my 5, 75% of my property is AE. The balance is X. Obviously, I built my house on X, but I would have not have made that 10,000 square foot minimum here if we were subdividing. So my point is that while we're not telling them that they need to fill in all 2.5 acres at 10,000 feet, because that's going to be when they go to build. They're only going to have to build the footprint or the pad up for whatever structure they're putting on to get outside of that floodplain zone. I think we're kind of limiting the scope down quite a bit. It's going to eliminate a lot of these subdivisions because of that. I mean, Florida, there's very few that still have pockets of X in them in the large parcels, especially if you're doing a 5-unit subdivision.
Right. So again, it doesn't mean you can't subdivide the property. You can go through the minor subdivision process.
We're not subdividing through the easy plan. Now we got to go through the hard plan, which is kind of defeats the purpose here.
Well, again, that's a broader policy decision. Certainly, debate amongst the commission, and we'd
Sure.
be happy to take whatever recommendations we need to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You have any other questions? Okay. I noticed that since we've added in the proposed tree preservation areas, is that correct?
Correct.
If we do a proposed tree preservation area and then it becomes agriculture exempt, that becomes mute. Is that not true on that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. My question to you is, why are we putting that in on agricultural zone properties when most of these properties are used, maybe not necessarily for agriculture exempt for commercial use, but most of it's used for like horses, pasture, and things of that nature. I mean, from what I reflect on people doing most of the time that live in these areas, they don't want to clear cut it anyway because you got to have trees and stuff for animals to get out of the sun. But I think we're adding on an additional layer here that we don't really need because you're looking at a minimum of 2.5 acres. It's not like we're doing a small lot. And so personally, I'd like to see that proposed tree preservation cut out of there because I think it's a moot point in the event if it were, I think we're being penalized if we don't have an agriculture exemption on the properties from these agricultural properties. From that standpoint. And I might add too that if it was exempted, we pay a whole lot less taxes, and these folks pay quite a bit of taxes on these larger parcels that are not agriculture exempt. So I'd like to see that stricken from these agricultural properties. The second thing I had here was on the easement. It says the applicant can prove that there are free and clear rights to add the new lots to the private easement. Why does someone that gives an easement have the right to allow me to subdivide or not? Why do I have to prove that if I've got a legal easement to my property?
Is it okay if I address the first statement about tree preservation? Thank you. The requirement is for submittal documentation to show the tree preservation area. Nothing in this section precludes or trumps the Chapter 50 minimum environmental standards. We do have circumstances that are already built into the code, and whether it sounds funny or not, the policy, the way that our code reads, is you have to do your best to protect trees while you're going through the subdivision process. You may set aside areas, but there are lots of circumstances where after you build a house on the lot, now you're tree exempt. It's a little frustrating for people who want to save all of the trees in perpetuity, but it is how the code works. So and I understand what you're saying, and that is a fair point, but I just want to clarify that added language in 10A number 2 is explaining what the code already does. So do you have any questions about that before I go to your second point?
Well, I have a problem with the code. I'll be straightforward here, because I think it's unfair to penalize someone just because they don't have a commercial use for their agricultural property, when, like I said, they pay more for because they don't have the commercial use, they pay more property tax than the adjacent property owner to them that can do, just because he's got an agriculture exemption, can do whatever. And I think I think these agricultural properties are being unfairly penalized. So that's from a code point of view to address your code.
It's the same story, the same situation that we had last month. It's the difference between ag exempt and ag. And here we have the same condition, is if it's ag exempt, but if it's not, it's a 2.5 acre hobby farm or a gentleman's farm, as they call it, they are now held to the fire, which I don't see that to be correct.
I don't either, and that's where I'm coming from on this. And I think you said it pretty correctly there. Okay.
Second
and
point.
the second one?
Yes. Was about direct access and having a private easement and having to show that there's clear and free use of that easement to add another lot. What that means is the private easements where there is some sort of a covenant to it or a restriction. We see sometimes with private roads, not really very many from what I've seen. Most private easements, it's just, I grant Ronnie Mills access to cross this part of my property. But there are a lot of easements that specifically say for one house or one lot. And they do try to limit the number of houses that are being added to that easement, because that affects all of the people who use that easement and maintain that easement. If they've already put restrictions in place on the number of people that can access that privately maintained easement, then we need to make sure that we're not doing something that's counter to what a legal document would say they are allowed to do.
Okay, here's a scenario that I'm going to give here in the event that this were to stay in. If you say, okay, I want you to prove it, so I need for you to give the documentation from the property owner that has given you that easement. The problem with this is that may not be the same property owner that give you that easement. So that property owner now can say, well, I don't want for you to subdivide that. And I've got a legal document, meaning the deed, showing that I got legal access to my property through this easement that I actually purchased. And now that I've got a different property owner who originally gave me the easement, and he wants to hamstring me and say, okay, you can't do this. You see where I'm going with this?
I do. Easements run with the land, access easements run with the
Absolutely.
land, and
Yeah.
sometimes they do say, you know, the owner of this property, comma, Ronnie Mills, but the easement runs with the land, so any of your future successors would have the access to that easement as well.
So why are we putting the burden on the property owner to prove that that's the case?
So all they have to do is give us a copy of the easement that they were given.
Okay.
Those are usually on their survey anyway. They usually call out, you know, per book and a page number. This is the easement, and we read the easement to see, you know, if it has any restrictions in it. There are a lot of times where there is no easement, and in those cases, you would have access or ability to add new units to that easement because there's no restriction. So again, if we're looking at a survey of the property, it's going to show us that information anyway. It doesn't mean that the property owner has to go to their neighbors to get them to sign anything.
Well, this is what the point I'm getting at when it says to prove it, and I think it would be probably better worded as if it says that you do have a legal unrestricted easement that would allow that, rather than say to prove that.
I see what you're saying. So if the applicant can prove there are free and clear rights, maybe it should say that the applicant has free or clear rights.
Right.
Okay. We can
Because
make that
otherwise,
change for
I'm going to tell you right now, what's going to happen is somebody going to say, well, I need a letter from your property owner, maybe not you, maybe not this staff, but maybe the future staff down the road may consider that. It goes back to the agriculture exemption process there too.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, if you owned a piece of agricultural property, you had the same rights as the person that had an agricultural exempt property. And for somewhere down the road, it became, okay, to make it a bona fide agriculture, you have to have an agriculture exemption. And I know that's not the case, but the hurdles that you have to jump in order to get that bona fide agricultural use makes it very difficult for the property owner, and I think it puts on a burden on them that shouldn't be there, okay? Because like I said, originally, if you own an agricultural property, you had the same rights as an agriculture exempt property. That's Matt. Anybody else? Anybody else have any comments on this that they'd like to address? Okay, so do we need, this doesn't need, are these going to be addressed before it goes to council? I mean, I hate to keep it coming back, but.
Correct. So what we would do is we always move forward to council the ordinance that was presented to PLDRC. We give a brief explanation of if any changes were made to what we call the clean version that ends up going to council. So it would be, we would include this staff report package and also a statement that says PLDRC, you know, wanted this specific change done. And then because I think taking the can prove there are free and clear rights, I think changing that to has, that's definitely something staff can support. So we can make sure that change happens in the ordinance prior to going to council.
Because I can show you a deed that has my easement on it without any restrictions.
Right.
And that should be sufficient, rather than, that prove they're kind of, get you in the mud.
Fair point, yes.
Okay. And then what about the proposed tree preservation areas?
Again, that's repeating what is already in the code. If you want to have that provision stricken, I can say that it was the county forester that wanted to have that information in there. He is not here today.
I just want to say that even if you remove it, we're still obligated to ask for it. It's a Chapter 50 provision when you are subdividing and you don't have that agricultural classification of your subdividing, you know, land. Chapter 50, which is the minimum environmental standards, requires that 15% tree preservation. So,
Even on agricultural property?
if you don't have
agriculture, what if it's exempt?
if it's exempt, then they don't have to come
There
to
you
us.
go. That's
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make.
But even if it's zone agriculture, the purpose of this is for the development of residential lots. So it's large residential lots.
But here we go back again. We're limited on the zoning classifications. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even include all the agricultural, the 1 acre agricultural zone properties. This is a minimum of 2.5 acres. And so it's very possible that an individual would want to have a pasture and have a 15% coverage of trees. I think is an undue burden on them and the reason I say this is because if it was an exempt property, then you wouldn't have to have that. Why are they being penalized? This is what I don't understand. When the neighbor right next door to them can have it.
Well,
If it's
they are
exempt.
using it for essentially non-agricultural development. So if they were completely developing in terms of, a bona fide agricultural provision, state statute says, hey, county, get out of the way, right? You can't touch them. But the purpose of this subdivision is to allow for large 2.5 acre residential lots in the agricultural zoning districts, so they can have a combination of residential and agricultural provisions. But it's that the fact that they are essentially large residential lots where someone can have that kind of, ranchette lifestyle, that falls squarely within, the land development authority of a county. If they wanted to just completely farm, this goes through the process and they don't have to talk to us. But these are 5 lots with 5 potential houses that are, we're allowing to be developed without going through the platting process. That's the point of it.
The 5 lots, 5 houses with a whole density that is very low. We're talking very low on the 2.5 acres. And this is where I'm going with this. I mean, for the majority of this, most of these 5 lot subdivisions are going to be a lot larger than the 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
Because you're only allowed to do it 5 on and it depends on the zoning. If you could have 40 acres, you can't do 5 8-acre lots if it's an A1. It's got to be 10 acres. All you can do is 4.
Yes, but at the same time, we've got minimum environmental standards in Chapter 50 that, regardless of the size of development or the size of the lots, has that 15% tree preservation. Every time you're subdividing a property, that Chapter 50 minimum environmental standard kicks in.
Okay, I don't want to beat this to death, but what if I have an agricultural exempt property and it's going to remain agricultural exempt, but yet I want to subdivide it? Do I have to go through this?
Depends upon if you're putting in a single-family house, but if you're just subdividing an agricultural piece of property, you don't have to comply with, so long as your subdivisions don't result in transformation into a non-agricultural use. Sure, you can subdivide all day.
What if it's got dual uses?
Well,
How's that?
then you're probably going to have to come top with permitting.
So,
Subdivide,
all right, so I've got 20 acres, right? And I'm full agricultural, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking about subdividing. And since I'm ag exempt, I can basically come in and take down as many trees as I need because I'm farming the land, correct?
Yes.
So what we're doing is we're telling people, go ahead and clear cut it now and then go subdivide, not the other way around and leave trees for behind, because you're going to force them into putting this easement in.
We do have is it 3 years? There's a
3 year. I understand the 3-year window. I get that, but still, 3 years is nothing. It's a blip. I've been here for more than 3 years, and it seems like I just got here yesterday.
All right. We have to work with the statutory preemption of, hey, if they've got this classification, county butt out. And that causes a lot of kind of strange timing issues. What's a good example? Barn weddings, right? So it's all about timing. So you have an ag classified property, build a barn, put some hay in it. The next day, you can have a wedding in it. But you can't purposely build like a wedding barn and start it off that way. So, we are having to accommodate this agricultural exemption, which preempts a lot of our code. So it seems unfair, but state statute says, hey, they've got that classification, we can't touch them.
That should be on all agricultural zone property, because you know what you're buying. The whole purpose of the codes and the ordinances and everything is to protect the public. It's not to govern just to be governed. And so I'm putting this undue burden on a property owner that doesn't necessarily need to have it on there, because if it was, they wouldn't allow you to stay away from agriculture exempt property.
Well,
And this is the point I'm making.
That ag classification also kicks in the Right to Farm Act, which is, protects existing farms from nuisances. Essentially, if they've been established for a year, they can operate as a farm, and, farming is intensive. It's not nice. It's not low impact. So that's one of the things about that, that whole bundle of rights that goes with agricultural classification is, hey, we're here, we're a commercial agricultural activity. We can generate a lot of impact, a lot of dirt, a lot of noise, and county, you can't touch us.
Well, and I agree. They shouldn't. I'm not going against the agriculture exemption. What I'm saying is we're in an agricultural zoning. We're putting agriculture zoning's got more restrictions than a residential zoning does when it comes to setbacks. And unless it's exempt. And if it's exempt, the setbacks go out the window. So it's an undue burden on the agriculture properties where it didn't used to be years ago. And the agricultural zoning, you could do the same thing. You could build a barn. You could put it right on close to the property line. You didn't have this 40-foot setback you had to contend with if it's not agriculture exempt. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
I did want to, and I don't want to belabor the point, you guys are the decision makers, and that's perfectly fair, but I do want to point out that the reasoning behind adding that language was not to require the tree preservation area. It was to make it clear to everyone applying that this is something that could apply, and you need to be thinking about it at the time of submission. So it's not trying to create regulations, because again, that's already in Chapter 50. It's more to make it very clear that this is something that could come into play.
Okay, wait, so can you, one more time, repeat that, please? Because it kind of contradicts something I'm reading. Go ahead. Say that one more time for me.
So any proposed tree preservation area is already required in Chapter 50. This Section 72.537 does not make any environmental rules.
Okay, so you're going back to Chapter 50 that's
Correct.
already required there. Gotcha. So which coincides with statement number 2 on the first page, where the forester said that tree preservation areas must be shown on the proposed plan, subdivision plan. Is that right?
Correct.
And so he's referring to Chapter 50?
Correct.
I still don't agree with it, but
That's another day.
yeah. While we're talking about changes, yeah, I'm not keen on this 10,000 square foot. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think that I would cut that in half to 5,000, which is a doable building. It's plenty of building pad if you need it to be, and it basically, especially with some of these properties that are FR, it's going to be tough to find 10,000 contiguous. You may have scattered about high pockets, but I think 5,000 is doable, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that's in 72-537, number 10C.
So the lot size, what
Well,
you're
it
saying
says-
is an area,
Yeah.
10,000 equivalent to 100 by 100, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying is
5,000.
5,000 In the, well, you can't build, it's in the uplands, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, she says it's gotta be X zone. Yeah, you have to have X amount of X zone property. When she calls it the 100-year floodplain, so in layman's term, it's X zone property.
Got it.
So if you've got, 20 acres and all your X is in one spot, you are basically now cannot subdivide. Even though you can technically still build an AE, you have to build up, but you can still build an AE. And we're not talking about 5,000 or 50-foot wide lots, or, these are lots that are not 5,000 square feet. These are 2.5 acre lots. So if any water is just displacing, you're displacing it on your own property.
Well, we can ask for it. Don't mean we're gonna get it. We can
I-
ask
absolutely.
for it. 5,000 be for the 75. Okay.
I'm sorry, Miss Craig, your mic's not on. Thank you.
The restrictions that are in place, though, are there, in my mind, to avoid future problems. So if you're talking about subdividing and then and filling in to make the flooding issues, for instance, go away, you're creating additional problems, other problems that the regulation is in place to alleviate to begin with.
We're not looking at.
We're not looking at
small lots. We're looking at large lots.
2.5 acre minimum.
Minimum 2.5 acres.
And you're not filling the entire 2.5 acre. The only thing that has to be filled in is the footprint or the pad for the house itself. And since we're not doing standard subdivisions where you have 50-foot wide lots, you have a house next to each other, and all those are being now elevated. That's what's causing some of the water runoff issues. In this particular case, you're only filling in your pad size for your house. Let's say you build a 5,000 square foot house, so it's just the 5,000 feet out of 2.5 acres is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
So you're displacing the water back onto your own property.
Because you're looking at over 100,000 square foot minimum lot size. That's a lot of this came into play and in the subdivision rules, and Ms. McFarland can correct me if I'm wrong, is because of the densities of these lots and wanting to make sure we're not flooding out. Because I do know in cases where they've filled in the uplands, and so now the water has nowhere to go except on the adjoining property owner. I see where you're coming from, but in this case, we're looking at a total different animal here when it becomes a 2.5 acre lot compared to a 50-foot wide by 60 or so lot in some of these subdivisions. And we approve a lot of these things, and this is, if we've got a wet sensitive area, then we need to. But in this case, you got 2.5 acres there, over 100,000 square foot. And what he's asking for is to reduce it down to the 5,000. Only have to have 5,000. Right?
That's correct.
Anyone else can get their input on this if they'd like.
Yeah, we're not the only ones,
Okay. Okay, does anyone have a problem on reducing it from 10,000 to 5,000?
No.
Okay. Can we make that notation? Can we make that notation?
I was just asking Kelly if there were any speaker cards, if we needed public participation.
Can we make that notation on your proposal to
The
reduce it
10,000 to
from 10,000 to
5,000?
5,000?
Absolutely, if that's what the vote is.
We don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that. I think we've got,
Yeah.
no one has an issue with it.
And the easement.
And the change in the easement, that was the only other thing that I could see from proving into the have.
Changing from prove to has.
To have an illegal easement that allows it, pretty much. And the only reason it wouldn't allow it is if it had a restriction on the easement.
And that's the way we would view it. Like, someone just gives me a copy of the easement and there's no restrictions, good to go. But if that easement has a restriction, or, I don't know, the easement was court created or something, then, we've got
Well,
some
my
strange
concern
issues.
here, Mr. Soria, is further down the road, that somebody comes up and says, okay, I need for you to, the property owner that I give you that easement, or has that easement, needs to give you permission.
Mhm.
And I don't want that to have to occur, because I can promise you,
Oh, I don't
a
want
lot
that
of
to
these
occur either.
easements-
That's
huh?
that's. I don't want that to occur either. That's
Well, that's why I said, we could, to has rather than to be able to prove,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, other than that, that's all I had.
Are there public speakers for this one? or no?
Do we have any public
No.
speakers?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we done on this?
Mhm.
That was the only two things that I had an issue with. And then Mr. Costa had an issue on the square footage, so.
Can I ask a question that's kind of related, but not directly? You work for the county for how long, approximately?
I've been here cumulatively for 18 years.
18 years. Because I know the note in here says existing lot and outside of any wetlands or wetland buffers. Are you aware of any case in the 18 years where we've approved a subdivision to be built on wetland? On a bona fide wetland? Not a floodplain, bona fide wetland?
I think your question is, have we ever created a lot that is 100% wetlands? Is that what the question is?
Sure, let's go with that.
My understanding is that there is a provision in the comprehensive plan
Mhm.
that requires you to have a certain number of square footage outside of the wetlands. I believe it's 10,000 square feet. Looking at Trish.
There's wetlands don't provide a lot of density, so
Mhm.
Uplands and wetlands are calculated differently in terms of density. You don't get a lot of yield from a wetland.
Mhm.
We also have avoidance and minimization standards, which says, if someone wanted to develop today, step one, avoid the wetlands. If you can't avoid the wetland,
Mhm.
as in it's necessary, usually you're building a road or some form of access,
Mhm.
then design the infrastructure so that you minimize the impacts. And then if you are building in a wetland, you gotta mitigate and compensate for all that water somehow.
Correct.
And that just spirals into a giant stormwater pond somewhere.
Mhm.
But, I think environmental usually makes the comment, hey, this does not meet our avoidance and minimization standards. Don't design a lot that is completely in the wetland.
Well, case in point, 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, we approved the borrow pit off of 44. And they were putting in temporary access roads that were cutting through the wetlands. And I remember that conversation went on for a good hour because there was no way to avoid it. So what they did was they built a temporary pond in the event that when the pit was then abandoned or completed, they would restore that section back to the original wetland. Correct? That would be the case? So in general, to answer my original question, in general, no, you cannot build on wetland as a generic term.
Unless it's mitigated.
Unless, well, I guess it's mitigated, and it depends on the quality of the wetland too. There's not.
Right. If you have like low isolated wetlands that are less than a certain acreage, those aren't jurisdictional. The Water Management District doesn't
Mhm.
account for them, and they don't require mitigation. For those types of those things, potentially, a lot could impact it.
Right.
But designing a modern subdivision
Mhm.
in a wetland is something that I don't believe we've approved. At
Correct.
least I haven't been here for very long. Now, you do have old subdivisions that are literally built, designed in a swamp somewhere. That's usually
Older subdivisions.
Yes.
Right.
But
We've also got subdivisions being put in the uplands, which creates a problem overall, but that's for another story.
Oh, that's for comment.
We're not gonna get in, I'm not gonna hold you here for that.
Yep, I need to hold you here.
Okay. All right, so we've made the change, we made the recommendations, and so can I get a motion to send this on to council with the changes that have been requested?
It don't come back to us then? Just the changes are automatic?
the two changes.
We're looking at the two changes from
That's
5,000
it?
to, I mean,
Okay.
they're saying they're gonna do it, so.
All right.
When will this go to council?
Probably the second meeting in November. The first meeting was canceled. It fell on election day, so we would be looking at the second meeting of November, possibly the first in December.
Because we're here today. Is it a conflict for us to speak at that meeting?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just if just how you're speaking is really what I would advise you. If you would like to speak as a body, I would recommend a motion to designate a few people to speak on behalf of the entire body. Otherwise, you can come up and speak on what you've stated, your individual provisions, but you don't have authority to speak for the body as a whole. That's really the only thing.
Okay.
Our three exceptions are the size, 5,000 square feet, contiguous. The second one was proof of easement.
Yes, to make it, just show that you
Was
have.
there a
an
third one?
easement. Well, the third one was the tree preservation, but that, my understanding is that reflects back to
To 50.
to 50, in which we have no control over.
Okay. All right.
Correct? Okay, I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, let's see. Let me give this a whirl here. So let me make a motion on case O-24-004 that we forward to the county council with a recommendation of approval with the two changes as discussed. One being the reduction of contiguous from 10,000 to 5,000 square feet, and two, the changing in the wording for proof of easement, I believe.
Mhm.
Done about right?
Can prove there are free and clear rights to the new lots.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor to go ahead and,
Go ahead.
to forward the ordinance.
Zero.
02400, I mean, 024004 to county council with the recommendations that we have forth set in this discussion this morning.
And I have a question.
From Mr. Costa, and a second from, who seconded it?
Edith.
Ms. Shelley?
You question?
Yeah, exactly. Don't question that. Hey,
Okay.
do we need
A
to?
second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? Now go ahead, Ms.
Yes,
Shelley.
thank you. I just for clarification, this discussion will be in their minutes, correct?
Not word for word, but it will be there.
Broader than just the two recommendations, to give that background for why.
And we can link. This is being recorded,
Right,
so
I
we
understand,
we can link to the agenda item. I'll set a timestamp for if you want to hear the discussion. Here's.
And
And,
then,
go ahead.
and then by doing this as well, are we saying, because you were talking about speaking on behalf of the board or not, so as we're doing this recommendation, then therefore, our chairman and people that can speak for the board at the
I would
county
recommend a separate motion if you want to designate someone to speak
Okay,
on
yeah. I
behalf of
think
the
that's
board.
important to do
Otherwise,
that.
you can go to the county council and speak individually and mention you're a member of the PLDRC. Here's my thoughts on it, but technically you're not speaking on behalf of the entire board.
Okay, then I would recommend that after we do this, we do
Mhm.
bring that forward to have, because from my perspective,
somebody
I'm more
represent
than
it.
happy
Yeah.
for Mr. Mills or Mr. Costa, especially the big discussion going on here, to speak on behalf of the board. That's my
Yep.
point.
Agree.
Okay, so we got a motion on the floor and a second.
Mm-hmm.
And any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, you want to address that now, if Mr. Costa wants to go speak? No, we need to make a motion.
Edith, all yours.
Go ahead.
Well, do I have a second?
Yeah,
Just kidding.
Because Pat is waiting to do the
He's
second.
waiting for his turn.
Nobody
Um,
jump in here.
Is it all right to name
Yeah,
both of you?
yes.
You're good with that, okay. I would like to make a motion that Chair Mills and PLDRC member Costa be allowed to speak on behalf of the board at the county council meeting.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor to allow myself and Mr. Costa to speak at the
November
county
meeting.
council meeting in regards to the ordinance. Here we go again.
Should you put a date on that or not, in case they change it?
Ordinance 024-004.
Gotcha, okay.
Mr. Costa and Mr. Mills in order to speak on behalf of the board.
Mhm.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. I will say the way that ordinance is presented, Mr. Soria, I did notice that, you know, we took out the access the road, but then we put in further down in the comments. Why wasn't that back to back? And also,
I think it's a word formatting issue.
Okay.
When we remove that, because we'd rather have one section that just talks about
because
access.
at first thought, it looks like,
Right.
okay, we're not even
Yeah, it's
addressing this. And
it's a duplicate. There's the original ordinance had two sections where it talked about access. So we removed the extraneous one, and we just, we clarified. Yeah, you can get access off of a public road, a private road, or an easement, and that is already constructed. And the whole point is minimal infrastructure, minimal investment. Go ahead and subdivide. I mean, that is the entire point. And having two sections talking about access was confusing, so we just removed the extraneous one.
because it almost looks when you're starting to read it, why do they want to completely throw this out? But then it falls back in for replacement further down the line.
Right. We can provide a clean. We
Okay.
probably should provide a clean version without the kind of word red line
Presentation?
markups.
Okay. All right. Okay, do we have any other public items?
No, sir.
Any staff items?
No, sir.
Any staff comments?
I apologize that the cones were not out today. We'll work harder with our facilities group to ensure that they will be next time.
I thought I was here the wrong day. I was late and on the wrong day.
Thought I was late, yeah.
Commission comments?
That was it.
I think we've made our comments. Press and citizen comments. This meeting is adjourned.